So for this week, we were going to record a couple of different tractor stories, and they all kind of got screwed up this week. But we're down in Illinois. We're in Indiana yesterday for a Thailand convention, which in 2 years we'll talk about that again. But we got thinking, I've done a tractor story with both Tony and Nick before, but we're talking this week. I got talking about the 50 series John Deere's this week, and it
sucks.
Come on now.
Sorry.
Come on now.
Something caught my throat.
But the talk of growing up in the 80s and into the 90s, that how vastly different it was, that there just wasn't new tractors the way you see new tractors today.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, like for you, so like around me, I could rattle off probably everybody that had a 4450 within, 30 miles of home, because you just kind of knew there weren't that many of those around. And now there's how many? I mean, when somebody gets a new tractor, like a row crop tractor, not like a utility or something, it's not that big of a deal. And I don't know that they're selling way more new tractors now. It's just, but percentage-wise, because there's such fewer farmers, it just seems like there's.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think back, you talk to your grandparents or your parents or whatever, and well, so-and-so got this new, and so-and-so bought that new, like during the 70s, et cetera, et cetera. Back when a smaller guy bought a new tractor, because there was no used ones to be had at some of the different times throughout ag, so they had to buy a new one. I remember Dad talking about, getting them in off the train at the dealership, and you had a waiting list. And you'd call a guy like, hey, got an 856 in, you want it or not? Well, does it have this, that, and the other? Oh, here's how it's optioned. Well, I don't know. You got to tell me right now or it's going to the next guy, And then they would go down the list and just, you'd have them all sold before you got them really in there and inspected, et cetera, et cetera. Like they were all gone, waiting for the next train load. I don't think it's that way these days.
No, and I think that's where, like, there were 3 times as many 4440s around as there were 4450s.
Yeah,
for instance,
for sure.
Because of the 80s and and now, I mean, I can think of who's got new tractors around. You just go, oh, the bigger operators just they run new stuff. And it used to be somebody bought a tractor, it went to that farm to die. Like, I mean, that tractor never left that farm, right?
Yeah.
And now, so you'll see a lot more guys that had a family. This was their, say that 1066. The family bought that tractor brand new and it never left. Yeah. Now the guys buying the new tractors will probably just trade that for the next one.
Yeah. There's not going to be anybody walking to their shed in 20 years and say, that 9460R built this farm, like they would with a 1066
right.
or an 806 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's
like, well, we had one of those for 2 years and we rolled it.
Yeah. Nowadays it's such a big tax game. There's so damn much money in farming. People are trading off tractors with 1,000 hours for a new one.
And the repairs are so much higher now than they were then, that it's like, well, you either want to buy one and stay on the forefront of trading it off while it's still under warranty, or you want to buy it on the backside where it's devalued a fair amount to where you're buying it cheaper. Like, well, if I got to throw some money at it, I'm still good, whereas if you keep that one and then you have to repair it, well, now I bought it new, I paid a premium for it to buy it new, and now I put how much money in it. Like, it seems like there's a little bit of a trickle down in there that you got to kind of manage a little bit.
Yeah, and I just don't know that we're going to see. So traditionally, on the row crop, U.S.-built row crop tractor market, they've been a decent investment. They generally hold their value. They kind of, if you factor in inflation, they're not as appreciating as much as people kind of think, but nevertheless, they hold their value very strong. I don't know that you're seeing that when these people are focused on, well, we can't own it out of warranty. I mean, look what we've seen on the combine side of it.
Yeah.
The depreciation on these combines is,
But they wear a ton more than a tractor, for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're a little bit different animal on that. I think the interesting thing to me always is, like, farming has its ebbs and flows, right? Good and bad, good and bad,
Yep.
good and bad. So you'll see that 1 or 2 good years, and then guys that were farming with stuff of this vintage all get a step or two up in the model years.
yep,
You know, you're like, well, they'll never jump into these electronic stuff, so on and so forth. But you run out of clean 4440s at some point in time. You run out of, or you need,
Yep.
honestly, hydraulics is what drives a bunch of this. Well, we need something with more hydraulics. We want a newer planter. We got to have the hydraulics. So we got to buy a tractor that goes along with it. So they end up bumping into something in the good years that they wouldn't have necessarily bought otherwise.
yeah,
You know, I mean, Deere was king of that. Well, we're gonna come out with this planter, but the
right.
tractor you got won't run it, so we're gonna sell you a tractor too.
Yep.
You know,
And that's, I think we've caused a lot of our problems for ourselves.
I mean, that's how Kinsey's essentially made their planter market.
Yeah.
We'll sell you
Yep.
a planter that your older tractor will still run, right? Like that was kind of their mantra for years.
Which is
You
a
know.
good idea. I mean, we're not saying that since there isn't the livestock around that there was, these tractors aren't getting, I mean, how many fairly good sized farm planting tractors get 150 hours a year?
Oh,
That's it.
how many tractors are on dealerships that never see dirt for an entire growing season?
Right.
Combine's the same. Like there's a ton of that stuff that never sees dirt for a year.
Yeah.
You know, there's enough stuff sitting on dealers' lots within 10 miles of here to farm everybody that we're close to,
Oh,
entire farm, without them using any of their own equipment.
Yeah. Easy.
You know, pretty easily. Now, we're probably blessed in the regard that we have several large
Yeah.
jockeys, dealerships, et cetera, but there's a ton of stuff that never sees dirt for a year or two.
But who saw this coming, even like with the dealership thing? That we would lose as many dealerships as we have. And then they've been basically location, no matter how many locations, it's 1 or 2 dealers is all it actually is. There's no, which I guess, I mean, the Deere dealers compete. There was 3 or 4 Deere dealers that were close to us. If you wanted a piece of Deere equipment, you price shop those Deere dealers against each other. Now there's no,
They got a protected territory essentially because for a 50-mile circle, they've got them all. You know?
Yeah.
Or maybe a 400-mile circle.
right.
You
And
know?
in some instances, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you get out west where it's really isolated.
And that has its pluses and minuses, you know, but technology has forced a little bit of that, like in the fact that you need somebody to specialize in, you know, auto steer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, a mom and pop dealership can't necessarily afford a guy that can do that. But if you're a multi-store dealership, well, you can have a guy dedicated to that, and maybe he services 3 out of your 12 dealers, and you got another guy that services another 3 dealers, et cetera. So you can keep them busy, you can justify their salary, so on and so forth. That has driven that partially. That's not the sole reason for it, but that's partially what has pushed it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, I mean, look at $1 million worth of inventory today is not a lot of inventory. Where, say in the 90s, $1 million worth of inventory, parts and equipment was a lot of equipment. So now you can stock a full range of stuff you need, you know, parts or equipment, but it's on, you know, all these different dealers versus having to, you know.
You know, I know back in the early 2000s, I think to be a Deere dealer, to start a new Deere dealer, you had to have X number of dollars net worth. I don't remember what the number was, but I think you had to have $1 million liquid, $1 million cash, essentially. And I just saw a stat the other day, and I do not remember the number, but I'm going to tell you it was like 10 to 20 liquid,
Yeah.
plus net worth well beyond that.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you say, if you're going to stock a dealership, multiple dealerships, like there's a ton of money, and you want to order 3 combines, 5 tractors, 2 planters, some corn heads, some draper heads. Well, next thing you know, you're to 10 million pretty quick, right?
Oh, yeah.
To put a bunch of stuff on the lot, plus the parts to service it, plus you got to have some bank to, if there's a dry spell, to pay your employees, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. Like you can't lay them off every week goes by. Well, we didn't sell a tractor, so I guess nobody comes in on Monday. Hopefully Jim sells one. You
Yeah.
guys can come back. Like you can't run it that way. So it takes such a pile of cash to do that, and that has also driven the multi-store thing.
Yeah. I guess I didn't see that really come in the way it did.
Maybe not to the extent it did.
Right. I
think all the ag manufacturers at some level look at cat, and they all low key want to be cat in the construction deal. Like we've got
Yeah.
2 guys per state, and they were, because if you look at it from the company standpoint, okay, well, our territory reps only really got to go to the main office.
Right.
Those guys will come to us and meet us at the main office. We'll do our little trainings, our little, hey, you got to be doing this, you should be doing that. Won't you look into this? And then they go back to the prospective branches instead of paying, John Q rep to go to every town in America
And
to do it.
we've actually been fortunate here. It's been more mergers. Like, I don't know of any John Deere store that just closed, like got bought out.
Yeah.
And then it's
Yeah.
gone from that town.
Yeah.
Still business as usual, just a different name on the sign.
And I think that's true of red and green for the most part, both for the last several years.
Yeah. In fact, I think the only one I know of that's actually going to close is Sloan Implement at Taylorville, only because they went to Edinburgh, the next town up, and built a brand new
Built a new
facility.
store.
Yeah.
So,
I mean-
essentially they're just moving it.
Yeah.
So in Minnesota, I've seen where they closed a lot of small dealers and built one massive dealer, kind of centrally located, and that still not quite the same.
No, it's not the same, but
It-
but it's so much different now. Like, well before Tony and I's time, but Sturtson used to have a John Deere dealer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can find anybody alive that still remembers it.
Right.
Probably there's a few people, but it's been gone for a long time. But at one point in time, every other town had a dealership
Oh, yeah.
of some brand because you had to. You could.
Yep.
You're not gonna drive your two-lunger
Yeah.
25 miles to the dealership to get
Yep.
ABC done to it. So every town had one. It didn't cost that much to stock them. They didn't have to build a giant shop because cabs weren't out. You could have basically a garage
Oh, yeah.
and be a dealer.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the snowball, idea that, things that, every time that snowball turns, it grows, it doubles in size or whatever. Well, the snowball has now gotten so big that every time it turns over,
Yeah.
it's.
I do think the next leg on dealerships will be stores going away because there's getting to
Yeah.
be fewer and fewer farmers. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mobile service has gotten so much better. Like, pick your random store around here. Let's take Altover, Sloan's, whoever. Their one service truck, is worth more than most of the dealerships that we remember. Well, even a little bit before we remember in the 70s.
Yeah.
One service truck is worth more than that.
Yeah.
yeah. And
So-
most farmers have a nice shop now
Have a
if,
nice
if they need to
shop.
come to you.
They can
Yeah.
come to you. Hauling is such a pain. Everything got so big and wide and heavy. It's hard to haul. It's hard to move. It's easier to fix it at your place. And like I said, now they're equipped with all that stuff. They've got trucks with cranes and this, that, and the other. So it's not like the old days. It's like, well, we can send 5 guys off there and try to lift it, or we've got the only A-frame chain hoist within 20 miles. So I guess you're bringing it to us. Now we got a crane. We'll just pick it off and take it, fix it there.
Yep.
So it's a different deal.
Well, and and maybe you're going to see more of the lawn and sport dealer.
Yeah.
Because they're selling. Well, even like Don Sama said.
Yeah.
That's become their business.
Sure.
Yeah,
More than,
for sure.
And the profit margin on your new, 24-row high-speed planter probably isn't all that good.
Right.
It's parts and service.
It's
on a lot
only
of
good
it.
when they're short. When they're short on supply.
Right.
Yeah.
When demand is high, crop prices are up, and they can only produce X. That's when the margin gets
Yep.
better. but otherwise they're probably making just as much. I mean, you don't have to go that far around here for power sports dealers that are selling them by the semi-load monthly.
Yep.
On the regular, like that's their business model. They sell a semi-load a month, you know? And if they make $500 a side-by-side at the end of the day, it's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're making more than that on, I would assume, I would hope, but if you sell enough of them, I guess it don't matter, you know? Plus, that's a ton of service work.
I just didn't think, I knew there was consolidation, farms get bigger, and I understood that years ago. I just didn't think we would see it as rapidly as we did. And I think the biggest change we saw was maybe the consolidation in the livestock, and that changed, that caused farming in general to consolidate so much more.
$7 corn killed a bunch of that.
It did.
That took a bunch of land out of pasture, put a bunch of ground in crop production, got rid of a ton of livestock guys.
Yep.
The first run up in that, whenever that was, killed off a bunch of those guys.
But I'd even say it started earlier with the late 90s with the hogs. 'Cause, I mean, a lot of guys had
Yeah.
some sows
A
and
bunch of those guys had two choices. Either build a bunch of confinement buildings
yep.
or get out of hogs.
Yep.
And looking back, the best choice was to get out at that time for the lion's share of them, obviously.
Yeah,
not for
I
everybody,
think so.
But a bunch of those guys, had they built all those buildings and then hogs went to
Oh,
10 cents a 100 weight or whatever it was, that wouldn't have been that great a plan, right?
So when you see all that, all these small livestock options went away, guys suddenly started to want to run more ground to grain farm. Well, then it was, labor-wise, you could expand the grain farm a lot easier than you could, say, double a herd. Plus, even infrastructure-wise, to run twice the acres was way cheaper to expand than it is to run twice as many sows.
Yeah. Well, most guys had enough equipment to run, 25 to 40% more acres than they were already running, if they wanted to. I mean, assuming things went okay, like assuming you don't have a catastrophic failure of a random sort, like you can probably work a little longer, plant for a few more days, start a little earlier, work a little later, and get it all done with the tractor and planter combo that we're setting in front of now. Like you could make that work.
Yeah. Well, how many guys, there were 1,000-acre farms when a John Deere 55 and 105 and 95 were new.
Yeah.
And the biggest head was a 6-row.
Yeah.
And they got it done just fine.
There's less acres farmed in the United States now than there was then, and they were getting it all done with
with way bigger
with
equipment.
M's and 2 cylinders.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
They were getting it done, but their window was a lot bigger too.
Yeah.
And their yield goals were a lot less. They didn't have to.
Which is, okay, so are we better today with higher crop prices, higher yields, but, the expense today to get into it?
No, now we just handle a ton of money coming and going.
Right.
The risk is higher. The reward potentially is higher, but you're handling a ton of money in the meantime. I remember years and years and years ago, seed corn salesman was in the shop, and I was, doing whatever I was doing, listening to Dad and this guy talk, and he left. I told Dad, I said, did I hear him right? Is $100 a bag for seed corn?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah. I'm like, then why do we sell it for so little? He's like, if it's worth $100 in a bag, why are we selling it by the wagon fold for like pennies? He's like, welcome to farming, son. And I'm like, I never really forgot that. I'm like, if you put a little treatment on it, put it in a bag with a name on it, it's worth this. I realize it's 2 different products, but it's not really 2 different products either.
Soybeans are the bigger ripoff because that is the same product.
Absolutely. Because when I was a little kid, like you put some in the bin, back for the next year. Pre-Roundup days, like you just
everybody saved a little bit of
take
seed.
a wagon in. Our local elevator would clean them.
Yep.
You'd dump them in the drill and you'd plant them.
Yep.
Well, and
Which is the same thing the seed companies were doing.
Yeah, and still are to this day.
Yeah.
which don't you suppose Roundup Ready was probably a bigger thing than we realized at the time it came out?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a handy tool. It was a great tool. It was phenomenal when it came out, but it drove large scale farming big time.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I didn't think
the Roundup Ready corn was going to be as big of a deal because it wasn't the end of the world to have decently clean corn.
Yeah, like I haven't sprayed Roundup. I've done a single pass corn,
Yeah.
like Resicor or something as soon as it's planted. I've been doing that for 15 years. I don't do any post spraying on corn.
Yeah.
Still, and they're clean as a whistle.
Well, and that's, I went back to mostly non-GMO corn just because the Roundup wasn't doing anything anyways.
Yeah. Was that not a train wreck that we got duped into also, triple stack corn?
Oh,
You were scared to death in case you had rootworm. Well, then let's go down to double stack. And it's like, shit, it's yielding just as good, if not better. Then you go down to non-GMO and it's like,
Yield drag on them and,
yeah,
well, the first year I planted conventional corn again, after not planting conventional corn for who knows how many years, it was probably about 5 years ago. And that was the best yielding corn I had ever done. And then I actually talked to a guy that owns a seed company, and I said, seems like we're seeing better yields out of the conventional. And he goes, every time you add a trait, you give up, you pay a price.
my personal favorite is seed corn guy. Now, I don't, I'm like, I don't want all the smart stack stuff. Just give me double pro. That's good enough for me. Okay. Write it down, and then come time for seed delivery. Well, we couldn't get that, so we give you smart stacks for free. So you're telling me your traits are worth nothing
Right.
if you don't, but I'm like, I don't want your traits because the double pro's better yield wise. Well, yeah, we couldn't get that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the same seed guy is the one that when you say, can you come out and take a look at this? I think my stand's a little bit light. We better replant this or something. He comes out and goes, oh, no, I think you're down to 24,000.
you got
can
24.
get full yield potential yet. But when you go to plant it, you're like, well, I'm going to plant 24,000. They go, oh, gosh, you got to be at 34,000 or you ain't going to get nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we've all been duped in a lot of areas.
Yeah. How about this tech fee? Now, sure, we're selling to Brazil without the tech fee, and they're buying Roundup for $4 a gallon, but you guys, you need to pay a tech fee.
That's one of the things that, the government involved in agriculture for us has been such people love to complain about the subsidies. And it's like, okay, get rid of the subsidies, but at the same time, why are they allowing that sort of stuff to happen? Like that's not right. That's, and not to mention they trained our competitors how to farm.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't
do
tell
it to
me
this day.
that they weren't lobbying Congress to get the USDA down there to show them how to farm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more money in their pocket.
Right.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they can't afford to buy the really good seeds. So, I'm a poor farmer. I can't afford to buy as good of a tractor.
Yeah.
John Deere should have to sell me a
Yeah.
cheaper tractor, right?
Well, if you want a good one, you probably won't get a John Deere, but still, I see your point.
I don't. Nick's an AGCO guy. He's a former AGCO dealer.
Yeah. D21s all the way with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like to throw a couple pieces of shit.
Yeah. So where's farming heading from here? I mean,
Currently, I mean, unless something changes, you end up, the political world, I don't know something unforeseen coming, but right now I don't think it's headed to a very good place. If it changes as much in the next 20 years as it has in the past 20, we're probably all three going to be
insulated a little
unemployed.
bit here because our fields are so small and cut up somewhat, even though they used to be bigger. Ironically, we took out all these fence rows, but the fields got smaller because they got split through an inheritance, and somebody wants to sell off their half, and so on and so forth. Like you look at my old plot books in the shout that I got hanging up, and there's 320s and 160s and 230s and et cetera, et cetera. Now they're all 20s, 40s, and 80s, but it's going the way of the corporate farm. I mean, but I suppose that's any business. I mean, look at the auto manufacturing world. There used to be this many companies that made cars.
Yeah.
Now we've got the big three on life support.
Yeah.
Even the foreign car companies are going broke now. They're talking about merging, so on and so forth. Like,
Yeah.
I think that any business that exists for long enough gets consolidated.
Yeah.
At one time there was probably 25 companies that made typewriters.
Yeah.
And then it probably got down to 3.
Yeah. How many
And then
gasoline
the computer
companies
comes
when
out.
Rockefeller started? I mean, the list is a mile long.
Yeah.
Now you're down to what, 5, 6, 7? I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. I mean,
I think any business that carries on for a long time, that's the natural ebb and flow of it.
and we just happen to be at the forefront. That's going to get a front row
We're
seat.
just going to get a front
this.
row seat for our industry
Yeah.
watching it happen.
Yeah.
When our dads were kids, you could probably buy 100 different bottle jacks like sitting underneath
Yeah.
your workbench right now from 100 different companies.
Yep.
Now there's 2 companies making them. They're putting different stickers on them to sell them in Harbor
Yeah.
Freight, wherever,
Yep.
Evor, take your pick. But they're probably only made in 2 different spots, you know? And that's just the way things go.
Yeah.
Which I get that it's a maturing industry. When a maturing industry, that's the way it goes. I don't think it's great for rural America.
It's terrible for rural America.
Yeah.
It's killing these small towns. But
Absolutely.
there's a lot of things that kill small towns, though. Like, and part of that is farmers doing that to themselves. Well, a guy from three towns away, he'll give me $5 more
Yeah.
an acre. Okay, so you rent it to him. Well, now he's not spending any money in your town,
Yeah.
at your restaurant, at your gas station, at your local dealership, whatever it is. And then, so naturally, the economy suffers there.
Yeah.
And that's just life, but it's unfortunate.
But we could change some things, to incentivize, more small farming, or at least you can't get young people involved in agriculture, because if we don't get a bunch of young people into farming, and not just talking about they're going to be the person that works for you, like actual young people starting to farm, because how many baby boomers are still operating a farm at this point that, that their era is coming to an end, and you're either going to see all that go to the massive farms, or you need somebody to step up and replace them. But if there's no opportunity,
Well, I think a lot of that goes back to the fact that a bunch of guys didn't get out when they should have or could have to bring the next generation in. A lot of guys got duped in the fact that, well, so-and-so's promised me this, or, it's
Yeah.
just the natural, if I'm working for him and he has no kids, surely this is going to work out some sort of way, whether he's promised that or not. Like that's how it happened in the past.
yep,
But that's not necessarily the case now. Like, you can't blame this generation. In some ways, I think they're smarter than we are. Because how many guys do you know that worked for John Doe Farmer for years with the plan that it would transit, and it might be their own kid. It might
Yeah.
be their
Oh,
own
yeah,
kid. Might be
absolutely.
their own kid. I mean, my wife dealt with this when GPS first came out. She's at a meeting and it's like, "Hi, I'm John Q Farmer. I'm 87, and this GPS stuff just intrigues the shit out of me. Hi, I'm John Q Farmer's son. I'm 69.
yeah,
I'm still waiting to take over the farm."
yeah,
So what incentive is there for his kid to be like, "Well, I'm signing me up for this train. I'd love to work for these guys for another 30
Yeah.
years with no chance to ever take it over."
Well-
Or the bigger killer to this, the thing that has drove this more than anything is, it used to be, okay, Ma and Pa Kettle own 1,000 acres. They got a boy and a girl, just for rough figure.
Yep.
Okay, Ma and Pa Kettle, they invest a little bit. They've worked hard their whole life. They own this 1,000 acres, and they have a substantial amount of cash to offset that 1,000 acres. So
Yep,
they can give
yep.
1,000 acres to the boy and cash to the girl, and it's even. And I'm not picking sides gender-wise, or women can't farm.
Yeah.
I'm not saying any of that. I'm just using this for an example.
Yep.
Well, then the farm price of land goes up to here. Well, now they've still got a pile of cash, but it doesn't offset what this ground is now worth. Well, now the brothers that don't farm, the sisters that don't farm, whoever wants a piece of that pie. The guy that's worked on the farm the whole time didn't have an off-farm job, so he can't afford to buy them out.
yeah.
He's the poorest one of the 2 or the 3. He's kind of screwed. He's like, "Well, I guess sell my part too, and I'll just cash the check and I'll go do whatever," because that's just the way it's went. In my opinion, like, you can't do it too early on, but you can't wait till the end either. At some point in the middle, in your 50s or whatever, you have to put a plan together and say, "Hey, here's the deal. You meet XYZ the day I turn 65. This deal's yours. Here's the circumstances. Here's the situation. Here's my buyout. Here's your siblings' buyout, whatever it is, and it's done, over with. We're going to write it down, and it's done." Otherwise, it escalates into this deal. Well, now ground's $20,000 an acre, and I don't have $7 million
Yes.
to make it work.
Well, and it's unfortunate that, so if you're part of a family operation now, there was a time if you didn't get along with family, you could buy a farm, start on your own,
Yeah.
and do that. But now your only way in, is you have to deal with the family.
Yeah.
So maybe if you stayed with the family, you had newer equipment and more land, et cetera, but you could still make it, with a smaller farm doing your own thing. That just, I think it comes back to we need to protect agricultural land for farmers. So your 1031 land exchange, that's fine. But if you've got X number of acres, you're
It should have
1031.
been 1-for-1.
Yep. And you can't do like kind. You can't say, well, I sold my factory
Yeah.
and I'm going to buy farmland. You
Yeah.
can't do that. And, let's start tying a lot of this, a lot of these program payments, et cetera, and even financing, like any kind of FSA stuff for that should be tied to operate. You have to be an operator.
I just talked to a good customer and friend of mine yesterday. He was like, hey, I don't know if you know, but, because I hadn't talked to him for a little bit. He's like, but I turned all the farm over to my son. I'm like, no kidding. He's like, yep, turned it all over to him. I'm still doing my seed and my chemical thing, but all the farm stuff's his. And I thanked him. I said, that's one of the best things I've ever heard. He's like, really? Did you want me out of farming? I'm like, no. But I said, I applaud you for being smart enough and young enough to get out while he's still smart enough and young enough to do the work, to make it work, and not saddle him at the end with a big squabble amongst siblings.
Yes.
To make it a problem.
Yeah.
You've worked it out while you're still in plenty good health, plenty good sane mind, plenty good enough to if another piece of ground comes up, you don't mind being an investor. You don't mind asking the other couple kids, hey, you want to invest in this with me? But this one's going to farm it, and here's what we're going to charge you for rent. Like, there's a lot of dynamics there. And I'm like, I applaud you for getting out when our grandparents' generation got out of farming.
Yeah.
Well, actually, probably a little bit before that, because this guy's made a lot of good decisions in his life. But like I want to shake his hand and pat him on the back, because you don't hear about that very often. It's usually, well, I'm 75 and I don't really like scooping grain bins, but a couple more good years and then I'll get out,
Yeah.
It's like,
And don't you think this all comes back to where I get sideways with farming being this noble profession that, rotator cuff surgery from patting yourself
Yeah,
on the back. And so like what you just talked about with the 1031 exchanges and all
Yep.
this and that, if you'd present that to most farmers, oh no, we can't do that. That would break me or my mom or my dad. Nobody wants to do anything good for the industry. It's me, me, me.
Yeah.
That would get in my pocket. So no, we're not doing that.
Even inheritance tax.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm very torn on inheritance tax because I do believe on one hand that if I bought this is mine, I should be able to pass it to my kids, I should do whatever. But our ancestors also left Europe because 5 people owned everything. Because there was no inheritance. You could just
Right,
keep snowballing,
And I think on that, that, you could also handle it by, so when you're saying, well, you can't possibly pass on a family farm or something. Sell the farm before you die.
Yeah.
For, that would solve a lot of the
if I
problems.
had a nickel for every time I've heard, well, old lady Kelly wanted this guy to have it, but she was 97 and a half. Couldn't sell it to him then. Now she's dead. Well, now here come the vultures.
Yep.
Whether that's neighbors wanting it, that's 3 cousins twice
Yep.
removed, they want their piece of the action, whatever it is. Well, if you want somebody to have it, damn it, sell it to them while you can make the decision and work it out yourself.
Well, and if you protect, let's just say, $5 million is protected, right?
Yep.
If you've got a $5 million head start, you might have to borrow a couple dollars. What bank is going to say, Nick,
Yeah.
you want to have a $10 million operation and you have a $5 million down payment? I just don't know if we can work with that. They're going to fall all over
Absolutely.
you to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But make the decision while you're still in this. I haven't fallen into this situation, so I'm fortunate in that regard, but I hear it and I see it every day. Like, I'm fortunate that my brother and I have both wanted to farm since we were wee little kids, and it's an even deal and it's fine. But I run into it all the time, all the time. Okay, there's 2 boys, 3 girls. The boys get all the ground, the girls get all the life insurance, they get all our other investments, they get the house, whatever, so on and so forth. And then, at the 8th hour, when dad falls down and, even though the boys have picked him up the last 256
Yep.
times, they happen to be there that day and they helped him up once. Well, I had to be here helping him up. I'd like 160 acres, and
Yep.
okay. And then, shit. I guess give me my pen, I'll change the will, but we still can't sell anything to anybody or do anything with it, even though, at what point, age-wise, do you say that if I've got 100,000 in the bank or 5 million in the bank, it's not going to change my life? Because I'm so old that I can't go do anything else, right? Like, I'm not going out and buying a muscle car. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not doing all these other things. I'm not going on these elaborate vacations. I'm not taking a cruise. I am literally, what makes me happy is to go uptown, talk farming with my buddies from the old days and drinking coffee.
Yeah.
You need like $9 for that.
Right. Right.
But you can't relinquish control. And I think that's that generation is beat into it. And I'm not bagging the baby boomer generation. It's a larger scope than that. But the control thing is the biggest thing. Well, if we turn it over, we can't, then we don't have control anymore. And it's like, how many people have been caught in the trap of doing all this bitch work for years?
Oh, yeah.
On the hope, promise, and dream that this is how it's going to go. And then, when push comes to shove, shit.
Yep.
Money's money. And now we got to take it to auction. And if you want it, buy it. Well, great, but that didn't really work out.
Well, and I say this all the time. The 2 biggest problems with agriculture are jealousy and greed.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the 2 biggest problems with the world.
Well, I suppose.
And that's, since Cain and Abel, that's been the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
But, okay.
And they had the whole world.
Yeah.
The land was free then.
But how about this? We'll wrap this one up, kind of, because otherwise we'll get...
Yeah, this will be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's just say, so all 3 of us graduated high school in the 90s.
Yep.
We didn't foresee land prices jumping the way they have, right, at that time. Farming wasn't, people didn't look at farmers as super wealthy people like when we were kids. So I think that we were better off when it was almost like that. So if you wanted to farm, you farmed because of the love of farming. Yeah. So tomorrow, if land values were half of what they were, it really wouldn't matter. As a matter of fact, you might go, well, then I could grow my farm a little bit if land was...
Mm-hmm. This is probably terrible to say, but when we were kids, I don't think any of us worried about it being for the money.
No.
We wanted to farm for the sheer love of the land and love of the job.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the financial.
I didn't either. It was just because I like tractors.
Because I like tractors,
yeah.
I like farming, I like mechanical stuff.
Yeah.
I love to run that stuff. I love to work on it. I love to do all the stuff. If you could make a living doing it, great. I wasn't planning on being a Rockefeller doing it.
Yeah, that's...
Just the fact that you got to do it put you in a segment of the population that was pretty unique.
Right. And, to be able to make a living with farm equipment was like, well, I'm rich right now because otherwise I'd have to work a job and I'd still want to buy farm equipment. And this way I've got...
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not even about the money, just the freedom of, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to do what I want to do. Yes, I have to plant. Yes, I have to harvest. But if I want to go do this other task, I could probably make that work. Where your buddy's dad works at a factory in our area, would have been Ward Color, a printing company. Mm-hmm. He's got to be there at X number hour. He's not leaving until X number hour.
Yep.
Now he's making more money per year, better benefits, better pension, all this, better health, all that stuff. But he doesn't have the freedom of being able to say, it's 1:00, Ryan's in town, let's go to the bar. Let's go driving to so-and-so's house and look at his tractor.
Yep.
They didn't have that freedom.
Right.
So we're trading the wealth for the freedom. You know, and that was part of the draw to me. Like, you know, my dad was never a full-time farmer, but I got to interact with a ton of them. He owned his own business. So we were saddled to that almost worse than a 9-to-5, plus the farming on top of it. But it was just I'm going to do something different tomorrow than I did today.
Yeah.
You know,
You're not just a robot, just standing there.
I'm not just putting steel in, stamping a bumper. And there's nothing wrong with that. I
No,
applaud the people that do
yep.
it. But for me, it's like, well, tomorrow I'm going to plant. The day after that, I'm going to, you know, my early planted stuff's coming up. I'm going to start cultivating. I'm going to do spray. Whatever. It's a different task every day. And that was the beauty to it for me, I think. And just the love of the land tied into the dirt. And the fact that my family had been here on this same piece of dirt since they came to America.
Yep.
You know, and that,
Well,
we're losing that. But
and we just talked about this yesterday about the, you know, none of us really love the, hey, thank a farmer, pat a farmer on the back because stuff. But that doesn't mean that it's not a noble profession in that, like, you can take pride in watching. There's something to be said about planting a crop, raising an animal, and seeing that actual return back to you.
Yes.
That's a really wonderful thing to get to see. Satisfaction.
That's where I get sideways with people too, because like I believe you should take pride in anything you do. If I'm going to hang a shelf up here on the wall, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to get it level. I'm going to make it look nice. I'm not just going to slap it up there.
Yeah.
And then it looks dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So take a little bit of pride, whether that's building houses, building sheds, farming,
And that's
whatever.
the thing that I think is hard to translate to this generation. The pride in a hard day's work and the satisfaction. Like some of my best days, I didn't make a dime.
Right.
But what I did that day came out correctly, and I was happy about the way the end result was. And it will make me money later on, hopefully, or it will make my ability to make money easier.
Yeah.
But just the pride in doing a job right.
Yeah.
And I think that is for sure being lost.
And sometimes that can be a job that means nothing to anybody else. Cleaning up a fence row, you know, taking out an old fence.
Digging in a water line to this shed.
Yeah, just
Like,
anything.
You could have hired Joe Schmo to do it instead.
Yeah, I'm going to do it myself.
You dug a trench, run a water line, turn the water on. Hey, water comes out over here.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's some of it that's obviously being lost.
I just wish some of these guys, I get so sick and tired of the excuse, you know, if a guy is farming 10,000 acres with a 400 by 400 shop and 19 quad tracks in the driveway, you know, just farming thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, just out beating on doors looking for the next one. Well, doesn't any business want to grow? Well, I mean, what's your end game? I mean,
Right.
where are we really going with it? You don't have enough is what you're telling me? I mean, I don't understand that. I never will, and I don't know.
Well, then, I mean, they shouldn't need any subsidies, right? I mean, because
Looks like they're doing okay. I mean,
right. I think this whole thought of well, the subsidies should be kind of an emergency thing. They should be if you're that successful, you want to grow that much. Like, how many combines can you drive at one time?
yeah.
And I just had this discussion with the farmer I know the other day. This world would be a lot better off in agriculture if farmers would do their own farming.
Yeah. I said for a long time, combine should never got bigger than Class 6.
Yeah.
You want a farmer ground, that's fine. You buy a shitload of 2388s. You buy a shitload of 9610s. Whatever. You've got a bunch of them, but they don't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and people say, oh no, they want to make this big equipment. They're doing it because there's demand for it. They're not trying to shove this down anybody's throat, and so they're doing it because they sell it. But you're never going to convince me that, say, New Holland would rather sell one big giant self-propelled forage harvester than 40 pull-type forage harvesters that they used to sell to the same the number of dairy farms.
I mean, to me, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. And if I sell one giant one, yeah, it's $1 million harvester. I sold it to you, but now I messed something up and you're pissed and you're like, well, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Well, now it's all gone because I had nobody else.
Well, and actually, that model doesn't work because if it did work, why have we lost so many farm equipment manufacturers?
Yeah.
You know, they're doing the same thing that farmers have been doing, where
Yeah.
it's big, big, big.
So you're seeing the auto industry too. I mean, you see it in every industry.
Yeah.
It's the way it goes, unfortunately. Look at your grocery stores.
Oh yeah.
Walmart's come in. How many small towns have a grocery store anymore? Almost none of them. You know, you see it on every level.
I really feel like, honestly, deep down, the United States as a whole, and I'm not farming, I mean everything, is on a giant hamster wheel until this whole thing implodes. And I hate to say, but everything is just bigger. Just
your ability to travel and move stuff. Like when we were kids, I remember dying to see the Fast Line magazine back when it was black and white. The front cover was color, but that was it. You know, and it's like, well, we're not getting that tractor. That's like 2 hours away.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to screw with that. You know, but now it's a global deal. You get on the internet, somebody ships it in, blah blah blah, whatever, and you have the ability to drive easier, so on and so forth. Back in the day when you weren't going 30 miles to the grocery store was appalling.
Right.
You're not going to do that,
Well,
you know?
if you wanted a 45, 55 two-wheel drive tractor, you'd be like, I'm gonna check the paper. Nothing's in the paper.
Yeah.
So then I'm gonna call a couple of the local dealers, and they don't have one. So they say, well, we've got a 4650 here, and you go, I guess we'll buy the 4650. Where today, you can go, I want a 4455 two-wheel drive.
this many hours.
Quad range. It has to have triple remotes. It has to have power beyond.
Filter it down, click.
Yep.
Okay, there's 3.
Yep.
So I'll
you can
call
buy.
it.
So it almost makes it not as special as it was when you know,
It's definitely different.
like,
It's the way of the world, but it's
I do think the one thing that is unforeseen right now is there's a very large generation of kids who have never seen tough times in farming, or had to really work hard at it. I'm not saying some guys don't work hard, shoveling bins, blah blah blah, but there's a whole generation of kids who've never sat on a 40-20 with a 12-row planter behind it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to do that as a rite of passage to be a farmer.
no.
But I'm just saying if this thing would implode and turn into the 1980s again, which I don't think it's going to, but if it would, there's a whole generation that I think is going to be like, I'm out. I'm not.
They
doing it.
haven't seen the world turn to the point that literally everybody you know in farming got an off-farm job. So did their mom,
Yeah.
et cetera, and they still were barely making it meet and still lost the farm.
Yeah.
They haven't seen that.
Yep.
I mean, there's a pocket here or there, but as a whole, they haven't seen it.
Yep.
Well, and they've never had to decide if they love to farm because there was no money, even if there was no money into it.
Yeah.
Because there's been money in it. Like we went into it going, well, I'm never gonna be rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
What if I get to do what I love to do?
yeah, then that's,
And
I'm
actually,
a firm believer that money doesn't equal happiness, so I don't even.
and really all of us though didn't come out the gate full-time farmers.
No.
We
No.
all always,
Yeah.
that was, the farming was kind of the secondary thing.
Yeah.
but it,
Until,
secondary, but it was priority.
sure.
You
Yeah.
know,
We did evenings and
secondary
weekends and-
income, but it was our priority in life.
Like I can name probably several kids off the top of my head. If you said, hey, this thing's really going south, we're going to be able to keep the acreage, but you're going to have to go to town and work a few hours of a night in a factory. They're done immediately. They got too much pride to even do that. Like, I could not be seen in a factory. I mean, seriously, they would never do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, like, well, you're gonna have to settle for an SLT.
Yeah.
This year, because
I mean, my situation's a little different, but like, my dad did more stuff on the farm the last 5 to 10 years than he did the previous 10 to 15. Because once my brother and I got of age to do all that, we took care of the farming, the actual labor part of it,
Yep.
the working ground, planting, this, that, and the other. I mean, he was still making decisions, so on and so forth.
Yep.
But we took care of all the labor portion of it for years because he had his main job to do.
yep,
He kept that going. We did that too, but we only did that when we weren't farming, which was, 11 months of the year.
Yeah.
Or 10, whatever it is. But we took care of the farming side of it for the most part.
Yeah.
The lion's share of the labor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later on when he turned more of the shop stuff over to us and we didn't push as hard to expand, et cetera, on the shop side of things, to where he was, well, I'm going to do this, that, and the other on the farm because that was his
Yeah, I enjoy that, yeah.
He enjoyed that more, off the concrete, sitting down for a minute, you know, and go do a little bit more of that. He worked more ground in the last 5 years than he did the previous 15 for sure, you know. Stuff got nicer.
Sure.
You know,
Yep.
so on and so forth, and it was easier to do, but, you know, not that he didn't put plenty of time in prior to that, but, you know, in the prime of 1086s, et cetera, like that, you know, my brother and I were out there doing a bunch of that, and he was in the shop, and I wouldn't change it. I'm not begrudging him for it, like, that's just the way things work out, you know, but it was actually great for me. That's where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
you know, but
I'll say this about like hard times when we've went through, you know, when it's tightened up in the past. There's a little part of me that just goes, okay, this is fine, because you don't find yourself wanting. You appreciate what you have a lot more than go, well, gosh, I just bought this piece of, you know, this planter here, but so-and-so just got a better planter. So now, you know,
Yeah.
so maybe just be
you and I've
happy.
talked 1,000 times on the phone, like, I don't really need any more shit. If I just fix up all the shit that I currently already have access to, that's a lifetime's worth of work. No more time than I have to dedicate to it, right?
Right.
To be doing side projects that aren't shop related or aren't actual, I mean, they're farm tractors, but not stuff that I absolutely have to have every day.
Yes.
For the farm. So if things are a little tighter and I don't go actively look for yet another 66 series tractor that I don't have to have, it's probably not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah.
It's unfortunate because I like to own them all, but I'm not going to.
No, I know. And I think that's, well, we talk about like the classic car thing all the time. You know, it's like one of these days, and you're
But I
just
don't have time to drive it anyway.
Yeah. But a tractor, like you won't think nothing of, oh, we should probably buy that tractor. You know, and that classic car might be way less money, but you're like, well, it's because I think somebody that really loves to farm kind of ends up, that has to be a priority, right? Because guys that didn't prioritize the farm in the past.
Yeah. Didn't fare so well.
No. So it's like, if you love it, you love it.
Yeah.
So should we record a little less PG podcast now?
Yeah, we probably.
Yeah, we can go do that. Yeah.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is just a little bit different, but I thought hopefully this is entertaining. And check out the Straightforward Farming Podcast, or, well, Tony, what about, you'll have it on YouTube also, won't you?
Yes. Yep.
So check that out. And
We promise we will do at least one tonight.
Yeah.
We hope.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.